Reports indicating that FEMA would deny grants to states and cities that boycott Israeli companies set the internet ablaze yesterday.
But now it appears that the Department of Homeland Security changed the wording of their anti-discrimination policy. Before, the wording of that policy specifically mentioned that boycotting or cutting commercial relations with Israel was a violation.
The DHS is now defying tying FEMA funds to one's Israel stance. DHS wrote on X, "There is no FEMA requirement tied to Israel in any current agreement. No states have lost funding and no new conditions have been imposed. FEMA grants remain governed by existing law and policy and not political litmus tests. DHS will enforce all anti-discrimination laws and policies, including as it relates to the BDS movement, which is expressly grounded in anti-Semitism. Those who engage in racial discrimination should not receive a single dollar of federal funding."
Notably, however, there is an ex-community note on DHS's post that reads, "Misleading. DHS terms and condition only now removed the section stating boycott means refusing to deal, cutting commercial relations, or otherwise limiting commercial relations, specifically with Israeli companies." The post then links to an archived version of DHS's policy.
The reports that indicated FEMA was tying funding to whether states and cities boycott Israel sparked backlash from both sides of the political aisle. Daily Wire host Matt Walsh wrote on X, "There is just no way to reasonably claim that this qualifies as America First."
Meanwhile, former Rising host and current YouTuber Crystal Ball called the policy absolute insanity.
Yes, there was a lot about this on social media yesterday, so it seems like the administration has backpedaled on this after getting a lot of criticism, including from right-leaning people, that emergency funds should not be, this is like a double negative situation where the government was saying we would not give emergency funds to a city if that city has a policy of boycotting, working with Israeli companies, because we're saying something about Palestine. Now, I have complicated feelings about this, though, because I don't know how you feel. Look, I am perfectly happy to object to a lot of what Israel is doing. If private institutions want to, like Ben and Jerry's or whatever, don't agree with Israel policy, so they want to not work with companies based in Israel, although then I find that a little, because it's not the Israeli government. Is every company in Israel necessarily endorsing what its government is doing? Is that fair?
Well, there were economic boycotts of apartheid South Africa, I think, on the same basis, that you isolate a nation economically because you find its policies so egregious. I think that would be the principle behind it.
So then you just punish a firm that is headquartered there? I don't know. I'm not big into sanctions and boycotts in general. Like, I was against the embargo of Cuba for a gazillion years that did nothing, and I don't even like a lot of the Russian sanctions or sanctions against anyone. I think it punishes the people there, and it does not. Maybe it helped in the South Africa example, but I don't think it has a very sterling track record of encouraging different policies or changing the regime. So, if you want to do it in your private capacity, I have no problem. And I agree with expressing opposition to what Israel's doing. If it's a boycott of the Israeli government, that's a little bit different to me. And now we're getting into, now this isn't even a private company. This is a city or a state. Should the public thing be doing political either? I don't know. I actually thought going into this that I usually agree with Matt Walsh on these types of things, and I was going to say this isn't America First and they should not have this policy. I don't really care either way if they have this policy, but now I've kind of talked myself into going, wait, why does the city boycott a contractor with just a company that's headquartered in Israel?
Well,
I wouldn't prohibit them from doing it. I don't know.
Shockingly, I find myself more in agreement with Matt Walsh than you are, and that rarely happens. I don't think that it is really at all sustainable or tenable to say we are going to condition emergency aid for American citizens in a particular state or city or municipality upon the policies of that state as they pertain to a foreign government. Now, I have numerous times expressed my vehement criticism of what Israel is doing specifically in Gaza over the last 21, 22 months, but I wouldn't actually support this policy or what appeared to be the initial policy for any, as it pertains to any foreign government. It is the argument for emergency aid to a particular state or place within the United States is that it assists the people who live in that place. It should not be kept from them on the basis of that state having a certain foreign policy.
So I agree with that. To be clear, I agree with that. I don't think either way, I don't think the funds should be based on them doing this or not doing it. Right. The funds should just be based on the needs of the people in the emergency area. It doesn't matter what the government's policy there is with respect to Israel pro or not. So, okay, I agree with that. But I don't know, let's say a city says they're going to do this boycott type thing for, we can use South Africa, but in today's political context, because white farmers are being attacked, we're going to boycott working with companies that are headquartered in South Africa that are mostly black-owned and mostly employees of color, and an administration said, well, that's racism, so we're not giving emergency funds. The federal government says you're racially discriminating against black-owned businesses, and so we're not going to give you these funds. I could see the Democrats getting mad about that.
If a state or city took that view of South Africa, I would strongly disagree with that view, and I would argue against it, and I think lots of people in Congress would argue against it and all the rest. In the instance of these funds, though, they are funds that pay for things like search and rescue teams, emergency managers. Even in the South Africa hypothetical, I would not argue for withholding funds that pay for that kind of function, even on the basis of a separate policy that I find very objectionable.
All right, I thought I could get you, but you're not taking my bait there.
I always enjoy a hypothetical in these things. It's good to, it is good to have those things to test out whether the position's consistent, I think.
Yeah, I also just think it's weird for cities to take positions on like major foreign country, foreign policy things. Like that's the purview of the federal government. And again, I agree. I am horrified by what a lot of has gone on with respect to the Israel government. I've resented our foreign policy being hijacked by Israel. I think it's not America first to be led into future wars or to send them aid unconditionally or at all. So I'm against all of that. We're going to be talking a little bit later about the new policy announced by Benjamin Netanyahu in the last 24 hours, in the last couple hours, that is really concerning, I think, an occupation of Gaza. So that's all very bad. It just seems like the federal government should be doing something about it.
Well, just
whatever.
Briefly, I know we have to wrap this up momentarily, but one of the things that I find most interesting about this specific story is the fact that the Trump administration obviously did feel a need to pull this back. They had initially set out the thing that was like, well, if you believe that about Israel, we're not giving you the funds. And they themselves appear to have thought, that's not actually a great idea. We'll take that language out. Now, whether that's a principled position, they decided it was wrong in principle, or they decided there were political dangers given the divisions on the right, which we also will be talking about in a moment. I think that itself is telling that they felt it wasn't plausible to continue with that policy or qualification.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting observation.
Meanwhile, is Stephen Colbert lining up a new gig? We'll tell you more next. We'll be right back after this.